The wind howled like a wounded beast over the small fishing village of Greyrock, its salty breath lashing against wooden huts and rattling loose shutters. Waves the size of small hills crashed against the shore, carrying with them the roar of a raging ocean. The villagers huddled in their homes, whispering prayers to the sea gods, for storms like this had a hunger of their own. Maya Everhart, 25 years old and known to most as the healer's daughter, stood by her window, heart pounding. The storm felt unnatural. She had grown up beside this ocean, tending to fishermen's cuts and burns, nursing children with fevers after cold swims, but tonight's tide had a strange, pulsing rhythm, almost as if the sea itself was alive and calling out. Then she heard it, not the wind, not the crashing waves, but a voice. A man's voice. She grabbed her cloak and lantern, ignoring her mother's warnings. The rain was knives against her skin as she fought her way down to the beach. Lightning tore the sky apart, and in its brief glare she saw it. A figure sprawled in the wet sand, chest rising and falling in painful jerks. At first, Maya thought it was just a shipwrecked sailor. But as she drew closer, the lantern's glow revealed the impossible. His skin shimmered faintly in the dark, pale as moonlight and marked with faint silver scales that caught the light. His lower body wasn't legs at all, but the powerful, glistening tail of a merman, the stuff of whispered legends. The tide lapped hungrily at him as if it wanted him back. But before Maya could act, a group of fishermen, their faces lit with fear and superstition, came running. "Sea demon," one cried. "It's one of them." "It'll curse our village," shouted another. Without hesitation, they dragged him farther from the shore, tossing dry driftwood around him. One struck a match. Maya's blood went cold. "Stop," she cried, rushing forward. "He's not a demon, he's hurt." "Hurt or not, he'll bring ruin," the oldest fisherman spat. "We burn it before the sea claims us all." The merman stirred weakly, his eyes, deep ocean blue and filled with pain, locking onto hers. In that moment, something passed between them, something ancient and unspoken. Maya didn't think. She threw herself between the flame and the merman, spreading her arms wide. "If you kill him, you'll have to go through me," she shouted, voice fierce despite the trembling in her legs. The villagers hesitated. No one dared harm the healer's daughter, but fear was stronger than respect. The match flared. Maya's heart pounded. "Please," she begged, softer now, "he's not our enemy." Lightning cracked again, and for a heartbeat the merman's tail shimmered brighter, as if echoing her plea. The fishermen muttered among themselves, torn between superstition and Maya's defiance. Finally, the old man snarled and tossed the match into the wet sand, extinguishing it instantly. "Take it then," he spat. "But when it brings a curse upon you, don't come to us." They left, muttering. Maya knelt beside the merman, rain soaking her hair. His breath was shallow. "You're safe now," she whispered. His lips moved, barely audible over the storm. "Thank you." It was the first time she'd ever heard a creature of the sea speak. The storm lasted until dawn, pounding the coast as if the sea were trying to reclaim what it had lost. Maya had spent the entire night moving the merman in secret, struggling against both the tide and her own fear that he might not survive. Her mother, a wise woman with kind eyes and sharp instincts, had been away tending to a sick neighbor, which gave Maya just enough time to act. She guided the merman into the hidden boathouse beneath their cottage, where her father's old fishing boat lay gathering dust. Here, the smell of salt and aged wood mingled with the sound of water lapping against the pilings. The merman lay stretched on a bed of wet seaweed Maya had hurriedly gathered to keep his scales from drying. His tail glistened faintly in the morning light, a blend of deep blues and silvers, every movement catching the light like gemstones. Maya knelt beside him with a basin of fresh seawater, pouring it gently over his tail. The moment the water touched him, a shiver ran through his body and his breathing eased. "You're going to be all right," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. His eyes opened slowly, two deep pools of ocean, their color shifting with the light. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, musical even in weakness. "You're in Greyrock Village," she explained. "I had to bring you here. They wanted to hurt you." His gaze darkened slightly as though he understood. Humans fear what they do not know. For a moment they simply looked at each other. Maya's pulse quickened, not just from fear of being caught, but from something she couldn't name. There was an unspoken gravity in his presence, as if he carried the weight of the ocean with him. I'm Maya, she offered. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Kalen, he said. Of the Coral Rose Kingdom. She frowned slightly. I've never heard of it. You wouldn't have, he replied. It lies far beneath the outer reefs, hidden from human sight. As he spoke, she noticed faint, intricate markings on his skin, almost like tattoos, but glowing faintly with a light that pulsed like a heartbeat. What happened to you? She asked. Kalen's jaw tightened. There was a battle. Not with your kind, but with those who dwell in the darker trenches. I was caught in the current and thrown into your world. He winced, the pain visible in every movement. Maya instinctively reached for his hand, surprisingly warm, his fingers webbed with fine, delicate membranes. You're safe here, she assured him. I'll make sure no one finds you. But even as she said it, she knew the danger. The villagers' fear was one thing, but storms that swept strangers ashore often carried omens, and omens always found their way into gossip. Kalen studied her for a long moment. You risk much for me. Why? She hesitated, then gave the only answer that felt true. Because you looked at me like you trusted me. And I couldn't let that be the last thing you did. Something shifted in his eyes, a quiet, wordless connection that seemed to ripple between them like the tide. Outside, the first rays of sun broke through the clouds, spilling golden light into the boathouse. It struck Kalen's tail, making it shimmer so brightly that Maya almost forgot to breathe. She knew then that this wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something far greater, something the sea itself might have set in motion. For 3 days, Maya kept Kalen hidden in the boathouse. She fetched seawater at dawn and dusk, brought him food when no one was watching, and tended to the strange wounds along his side. They were like nothing she'd ever seen, ragged, yet glowing faintly as if the injury itself carried the memory of some deep, ancient power. Kalen healed faster than she expected. His voice, once strained, grew stronger. He told her about coral cities that shimmered with pearl light, about sea gardens that swayed in currents like endless fields of flowers, and about creatures that could change shape with the tides. In return, Maya told him about Grey Rock, the fishing seasons, the harvest festivals, the taste of summer fruits, and the smell of bread baking in the old stone oven. But on the 4th evening, something happened that made Maya's heart race in a way she didn't understand. It was just after sunset. The boathouse was bathed in the pale glow of moonlight when Kalen asked softly, "Do you want to hear the ocean's song?" She tilted her head. The ocean's song? Without waiting for an answer, Kalen closed his eyes and began to hum, low at first, then rising into a melody that wrapped around her like a warm tide. It wasn't like any song she'd ever heard. It was both sorrowful and beautiful, filled with echoes of crashing waves, whispering currents, and the deep heartbeat of the sea. The sound seemed to weave through her bones, calming her breathing, making her eyelids grow heavy. But when she blinked, she realized something strange. The air in the boathouse shimmered faintly, and through the cracks in the walls she could see the sea, even though the tide was far below. In the moonlight, it glowed with colors she couldn't name, and strange, beautiful shapes moved beneath the surface. Kalen opened his eyes slowly and the vision faded. "The ocean is alive," he said quietly. "It speaks, if you know how to listen." Maya swallowed hard, still caught in the afterglow of the magic. "You showed me that, just by singing?" He smiled faintly. "A gift from my people. We call it tide singing." For a moment they just looked at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Then Kalen's gaze softened. "I have not told you the most important thing, Maya. I was not thrown ashore by chance. The tides carried me to you." Her pulse quickened. "To me? Why?" He hesitated, as though the truth might change everything, but before he could speak, the sound of footsteps and voices drifted from above. "We saw her down by the shore last night, always bringing buckets of water." "What's she hiding?" a man's voice whispered. Maya's blood went cold. The villagers were suspicious. If they found Kalen now, there would be no stopping them. Kalen's eyes met hers, steady and calm despite the danger. "Then we must decide quickly," he said. "Do you want me to go, or will you take the risk to keep me?" She didn't hesitate. "I'll keep you." And in that moment, Kalen's faint smile turned into something warmer, something that promised this was just the beginning. Maya didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards above, every murmur from the street outside made her heart leap. The villagers' whispers had sharpened into suspicion, and suspicion in Grey Rock was dangerous, it was only a step away from pitchforks and fire. She spent the hours before dawn moving Kaelin from the boathouse to a hidden sea cave at the base of the cliffs. Few villagers dared go there. They believed spirits of drowned sailors lingered among the rocks. For Maya, it was the perfect hiding place. The cave opened onto a small tidal pool, its water glowing faintly with plankton that danced like stars whenever Kaelin moved. His tail shimmered in the dim light as he settled into the pool with a sigh of relief. "You risk much for me," he said again, his voice a low rumble against the sound of dripping water. "More than anyone I have known on land." Maya knelt beside the pool, brushing a damp lock of hair from her face. "I couldn't live with myself if I let them hurt you. Besides," she hesitated, feeling her cheeks warm, "I don't want you to leave." His eyes met hers, deep, shifting blues as if tides were moving inside them. "Then perhaps the sea was right about you." She tilted her head. Kaelin's gaze softened, but there was something reverent in his tone. "Long ago my people told of the tide-bound, humans marked by the ocean's spirit, born to bridge the worlds of land and water. I didn't believe it until the currents brought me to your shore." Maya tried to laugh but it came out breathless. "You're saying the sea sent you here, for me?" "I am saying," Kaelin murmured, his voice quiet but certain, "that I have felt your presence long before I saw your face." The words lodged in her chest, both impossible and undeniable. She wanted to ask more, but the sound of distant shouting reached the cave entrance. She froze. Two figures stood silhouetted against the rising sun. Fishermen, their voices low and grim. "She was seen at the cliffs," one said. "If she's hiding something, this is where it'll be." Kaelin's tail flicked anxiously under the water, sending ripples across the glowing pool. Maya's heart pounded. If they stepped into the cave there would be no hiding him. She pressed a hand to his arm. "Go deeper, there's an underwater tunnel." "I won't leave you here alone with them," he said, eyes hard. "You have to," she urged. "If they see you they'll kill you." Reluctance warred with trust in his eyes, but finally Kaelin slid beneath the water, his tail flashing once before disappearing into the dark. Moments later the fishermen entered the cave, lanterns cutting through the shadows. Their light fell on Maya, kneeling beside the water, alone. "What are you doing here?" one demanded. "Gathering herbs," she said quickly, holding up a wet bundle of sea kelp she'd hidden for just this moment. "The tide brings good ones after a storm." They searched the cave, their suspicion still sharp, but after finding nothing they left with muttered warnings. Maya exhaled shakily, her hands trembling. From the far end of the pool, Kaelin's head broke the surface again. His hair clung to his face, but his eyes were fixed on hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "You faced them for me," he said softly. "And I'd do it again," she replied without thinking. His gaze lingered, and then, as if the decision had been made for him, Kaelin swam closer, the water glowing around him. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm despite the chill. "Then perhaps," he murmured, "I was never meant to return to the sea without you." Her heart thudded in her chest and she realized, against all reason, against every danger, she didn't want him to leave either. Days passed and the cave became their sanctuary. Each evening, when the tide was high and the sun slid beneath the horizon, Maya would slip away from the village to meet Kaelin. They spoke of everything, her childhood on the cliffs, his life in the Coral Rose Kingdom, the strange similarities between starlight above and bioluminescence below. And slowly, without either of them naming it, their hands began to linger when they touched, their eyes began to hold each other's longer than before. One night, Kaelin brought her to the edge of the tidal pool. "Come into the water," he said. She hesitated. "It's freezing." He smiled faintly. "Trust me." When she stepped in, the cold bit at her skin, but the moment his hands took hers, the chill vanished. The pool's glow grew brighter, surrounding them in a shimmering halo. "I can show you," Kaelin murmured, "how my people breathe beneath the waves." Before she could ask how, he leaned closer, his lips brushing hers, not quite a kiss but enough to send her heart racing. A warmth spread through her chest and suddenly the air felt thick and strange. He drew her gently under the water. Maya gasped, not from fear but because she realized she could breathe. The cave around them faded into something vast and magical. Through the underwater tunnel, they emerged into a hidden lagoon, its waters lit by drifting lights that looked like floating stars. Maya's voice was a whisper when they surfaced. It's beautiful. Kaylin's gaze didn't leave her face. So are you. Her breath caught. And this time when he leaned in, there was no hesitation. Their lips met, soft at first, then deepening with a heat that rivaled the glow around them. The world seemed to still, the tide itself holding its breath. But the moment shattered when a sound echoed from the cliffs, the blare of the village horn. It was only used for one thing: danger. Maya pulled back, fear flashing in her eyes. Something's wrong. Kaylin's expression darkened. Stay here. I can't, she began, but he had already dived beneath the surface. Moments later he returned, his jaw tight. A fishing boat overturned near the reef, he said. The currents are too strong, they'll drown before anyone reaches them. Maya's heart pounded. Then you have to help them. He hesitated. If they see me. Kaylin, please, she urged, gripping his arm. You can save them. I don't care if they see you, I care if they die. For a long moment he searched her eyes. Then with a sharp nod, he slipped beneath the waves, his tail flashing once before disappearing into the deep. Maya swam to the lagoon's edge, heart hammering, knowing that when Kaylin returned, everything in Grey Rock might change, for better or worse. The horn's echo still rattled in Maya's chest as she scrambled up the rocky path toward the cliffs. Waves crashed violently against the shore, and in the distance she could just make out the capsized fishing boat being tossed like a child's toy. The villagers had gathered at the beach, shouting and pointing. A handful of men tried to launch another boat, but the waves kept throwing them back. Then someone cried out, "Look!" Out beyond the breakers, something moved, a streak of silver cutting through the water faster than any fish. It reached the overturned boat, and in the next instant Kaylin's upper body broke the surface. His arms wrapped around one of the struggling fishermen, lifting him above the waves. The other men clung to the wreckage, coughing and choking. Gasps and fearful cries erupted on the shore. "It's the sea demon," someone yelled. "No, it's saving them," another countered. Kaylin dove again, emerging moments later with another man. The villagers' fear tangled with confusion, their voices a mix of awe and suspicion. Maya's heart ached watching him fight the waves, every movement powered by that magnificent tail she'd come to know so well. He brought each man to the shallow surf, staying just far enough that the water still covered him. The last man, barely conscious, slipped from Kaylin's grasp just as a wave crashed over them. Maya's breath caught, but then Kaylin surged upward, pulling the fisherman with him and guiding him to safety. The beach fell silent for a moment, broken only by the sound of ragged breathing and the hiss of the retreating tide. That silence shattered when the old fisherman from the night she first found Kaylin stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You all see it now. A creature from the deep here in our waters." Kaylin's gaze swept over the crowd, calm but unreadable. "Your men would be dead if not for me." "That doesn't change what you are," the old man spat. "The sea sends such things as omens. We should drive it back before it curses us all." Maya stepped forward, planting herself between Kaylin and the villagers. "He's not a curse, he's my friend." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd at that word, friend. Maya could feel their judgment pressing in on her, but she held her ground. Kaylin's eyes flicked to hers and something unspoken passed between them, gratitude and maybe more. The old fisherman raised his voice. "If it stays we will have no peace. Choose Maya Everhart, your people or that thing from the sea." The crowd's eyes bored into her. Maya's heart pounded, the salt wind stinging her face. She wanted to shout the truth, that Kaylin was more human in heart than any of them, but the weight of the moment stole her words. Then Kaylin's voice, low but steady, broke the standoff. "I will go," he said, though his eyes never left hers. "But know this, the tides always return to the shore they love." Before anyone could move, he slipped beneath the waves, vanishing into the depths. Maya stood frozen, staring at the dark water, the words "the shore they love" echoing in her mind. She knew he would come back, and she knew that when he did, her choice would change both their worlds forever. 3 nights passed without a glimpse of Kaylin. Maya returned to the sea cave every evening, staring into the glowing pool as if willing him to rise from it. The villagers' whispers had only grown sharper. Some spoke of bad omens, others of blessings, but all agreed that the ocean felt different since the night Kaylin saved the fisherman. On the 4th night the wind shifted. The air was heavy, charged with something unnatural. The waves crashed harder than usual, and the scent of salt was laced with a strange, metallic tang. Maya's chest tightened, the same unnatural energy she'd felt the night she first found him. Then she heard it, a deep, guttural roar from beyond the cliffs. She ran toward the shore, her heart pounding. The scene that met her eyes froze her in place. Out in the surf, shadows twisted beneath the waves, massive shapes with glowing red eyes and jagged fins. They moved with a predator's grace, circling a lone figure in the water. Killen. He fought fiercely, his tail flashing silver and blue as he struck at the creatures with a coral spear. But there were too many. Maya, get back! His voice carried over the roar of the sea. She ignored him, running into the shallows until the icy water bit at her waist. You can't fight them alone. One of the creatures surged upward, its maw opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Instinct overrode fear. Maya grabbed a piece of driftwood and swung with all her strength, striking the beast across the snout. It recoiled with a screech. Kalen's eyes locked on hers. You're mad, he breathed even as his lips curved in something like awe. The battle was chaos, water churning, scales flashing, the night alive with sound and fury. But together they fought like they'd been born to it. Kalen's spear struck true, Maya's quick strikes driving the beasts back. At last, with a final echoing bellow, the remaining creatures sank into the depths, their glowing eyes fading into black. Kalen floated in the shallows, breathing hard, blood, both his and theirs, swirling around him. Maya rushed to him, cradling his face in her hands. You're hurt. He shook his head, smiling faintly. You fought beside me. No one from your world has ever done that. I couldn't let you face them alone, she whispered. His gaze softened and he reached for her hand. Maya Everhart, the sea was right. You are tide-bound. Your courage is the bridge between our worlds. Her breath caught. What does that mean? It means, Kalen said, pulling her gently closer, that I am bound to you, as the tide is bound to the moon. And before she could reply, his lips met hers, warm and sure despite the cold water around them. The kiss carried the salt of the sea and the heat of something eternal. When they parted, Kalen rested his forehead against hers. I cannot stay on land forever. But I can return, again and again, until the tides themselves fade. Maya smiled through tears. Then I'll be here. Every time. The first light of dawn spilled over the horizon, painting the waves in gold. The villagers stood on the cliffs above, silent witnesses to what had just unfolded, and for the first time, not a single voice rose in anger. Kalen slid back into the deeper water, his tail catching the sunlight. Until the tide returns, he said softly. And with one powerful stroke, he vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind not an ending, but a promise that the sea and the shore would never be strangers again.